All right, our second podcast. Welcome to Right Place, Right Time. If you wanted to know more about this week's baccalaureate topic, you're at the right place at the right time. Thank you, Nadine, for coming up with a really cool name for our podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. It was more of a joint effort.
I really liked our topic for this week because, as anyone knows, as I like to talk about it a lot, my degree's in psychology. So I think this is super interesting.
Yeah.
And all of my research that I did in college was about people with antisocial personality traits. So villains.
Yeah.
Criminals. That's my whole thing. I was really excited when Heduck teacher showed me this.
Oh.
And when I looked in on his baccalaureate class the other day and he didn't know it. And I think I scared him a little bit. Because he looked over and I was in the door like pressed against the door. How could you be talking about criminals without me? That's my whole thing. Anyways, is the presence of villains necessary in our lives to provide balance and inspire personal growth? Or do they primarily contribute to societal harm and conflict? Nadine, thoughts?
Well, I think that villains do help make us into better people by setting an example of what happens when we act the way they do. But when it comes to crimes like murder or brainwashing and gaslighting, I feel that it contributes more to since the latter means you don't even know you've been brainwashed and deprived of the right to make your own decisions yourself.
True. I have personal experience with gaslighting and brainwashing.
Oh, no.
And all that good stuff. I can say it did help me grow as a person. Like, especially when you're a victim of it, it's horrible. But then even when you're free, like it kind of
Haunts you.
There's like an adjustment period where you're like, I've never thought about me before. And suddenly your brain is not filled with, oh, my situation is so horrible and this person is so terrible and I need to do everything to make them happy so that they're nicer to me. Like it's filled with, oh, I like going for walks by the river.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I suddenly have free time. Wow. I want to play piano some more. I don't hate playing piano anymore. Like, suddenly I enjoy that again. So I think, they can contribute to personal growth. Mm-hmm. But the question is kind of, what do they do mostly? So I like primarily. And I think primarily, they contribute to societal harm and conflict.
Yeah.
But then there's also the question of what is a villain?
Mm-hmm.
Do we consider someone that does bad things because of their circumstances a villain? Or do we consider a villain someone who's evil just for the sake of being evil?
Exactly.
Which, for me, I consider a villain someone who's evil for the sake of being evil. And I complained recently to my friend. I was they're erasing villains from movies. No one is ever just evil anymore. Like Cruella de Vil. Have you watched the Dalmatian movie? The one with the Dalmatians?
Yeah.
She's evil. She makes fur coats out of puppies. And then they came in with this like remake of, she doesn't actually make fur coats out of puppies. And actually, like, she had all these horrible things happen to her that made her kind of like a bad guy.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, what happened to the evil lady that like made coats out of puppies? Like, she was just evil. Mm-hmm. And it made you, like root for the the protagonist, you know, like the main
And the main
characters.
characters. Mm-hmm.
But now it's kind of like Black Panther is like number one example, I think. Have you watched Black Panther?
No.
Oh, man. It's a Marvel movie for anyone that doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
About this guy that dresses up like a Black Panther. That's like his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first movie, he kind of, he's not even a villain because he's not like a bad person. He's a person that bad things happen to. And he's just the antagonist.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like an actual villain. He's not an evil person doing things for the sake of being evil. He's doing what he thinks is right. But the way that he's doing it is wrong, you know?
Oh, I see.
There's been a shift in media and movies and things towards that narrative of they're not evil, just bad things happen to them.
Okay.
But it's also created more of a leniency, like amongst society, I think, where people are a little more forgiving of things.
I see.
And so actual villains, actual horrible people, I think people are not as fast to kind of cut them out of their lives or stop associating with them. Because they're like, oh, well, maybe something bad happened to make him this way. No, he's just evil.
Yeah, for example, with brainwashing and gaslighting, that's serious crime. You know, you don't know what that person is going to do to you, and you're just gonna say, "Oh no, he must have had some traumatic childhood experience that led him to be so sadistic." I don't know, and I'm like, okay, I understand that you are a very empathetic and kind person, but that person might just kill you. You never know what's going to happen in that situation. You have to be safe first, you know, like you said, like not associating with that person, or at least in a safe environment before thinking over why that person even tried to do such things to you.
Yeah, exactly. And like, if you take classes at an American university, I don't know that Korean universities do this because I think they're more centered around what you actually choose to study.
Okay.
But American universities, they're like, oh, you need to be well-rounded. And so you get the option of like philosophy or ethics, psychology or sociology. And sociology is kind of the big picture view of like society, right? And then psychology is like the study of the mind and the individual. And I took both classes.
Wow.
It's like sociology is really interesting too, but it focuses more on the systems that we have in place, like the prison system and things like that. Psychology is, why is that person in prison in the first place? And one of the first things they teach you in a general psychology class is there's this big debate of nature versus nurture. Nature is what you're born with. So like you're born with blue eyes or brown eyes or green eyes or black eyes or whatever. Same thing with your brain. You're born with certain traits, right?
Yes.
Like maybe you're born left-handed. You write with your left hand because your brain is wired in a certain way that you operate better with your left hand. Or you're born right-handed. Same thing for personalities, right? There's also nurture, which is how are you raised? What kind of house do you live in? Like, what's your economic, your money situation? Like, how much money does your family have? Does that cause stress in your life? You know, a lot of people become criminals because they're motivated by their financial situation. Money. They have no money. So what do? If they have no money, they have a poor education, or sometimes they leave school early and have no education. They can't get a job. They turn to crime. But then there's also They found that it's not one thing or the other. It's both nature and nurture. It matters what you're born with and also how you're raised.
Yeah.
And so the people that are villains, usually it's mostly what they're born with.
Oh, dear.
Largely, it's their brain is wired differently. And so the way that they get a thrill, you know, like we would ride a roller coaster if we want a thrill.
Yes.
Or pick up a new hobby. They don't get the chemical in their brain that excites them unless they do something extreme.
That's their new hobby.
That's their new hobby, is something extreme. And what's more extreme than being a villain? So that's what they are. They're a villain. What's more extreme than bullying? You know, if you can't get the chemicals that your brain needs to stimulate yourself and keep your brain active by playing piano, maybe you'll get it from something worse, more
violent.
The basic way of saying it is like more thrilling.
Yes.
It's a thrill.
I know.
And typically we think of a thrill as something positive, right?
Yeah.
Like roller coasters are thrilling. Skydiving is thrilling. But a thrill can also be a terrible thing, you know? If your thrill is making fur coats out of puppies, like Cruella de Vil,
yeah,
then you become a villain.
Yes. But I think it also kind of highlights how I guess villains do bad deeds, yes, but how a society views that person is going to be a big factor in like saying, oh, he's a villain or she's a villain or they're not a villain. And like, for example, let's think medieval ages. Women had no, I can't believe I just said women's. No.
Women's.
Women had no like rights, civil or any, pretty much no rights. They lived like slaves. And at the time, that was a man just because they treated their wife like a slave, that didn't mean that they were villains. Right now, like today, society might think that, oh my goodness, what is happening in that household? But in medieval ages, that was fine. You could kill your wife for any other reason. I'm not just saying medieval, like Europe. I'm saying Asia. I'm saying Africa. It doesn't matter where you were around that time, and some places even now. Treating your, family or, the family women as slaves and killing them for any other reason, that was not being a villain. And I talked to other people just kind of preparing for this. And like, I found some really interesting perspectives because like some said on a surface level, if villains disappear, it seems like the world will be happier. Like, villains, everyone bad is gone and we're all happy. Nothing, like no one's in danger. No one's going to die. No one's being bullied. No one's, in psychological depression or anything. But in fact, to be honest, like to say who a villain is and just saying, oh, that person is a villain just because someone did something, that's just seeing a piece of that person. I'm not saying like, psychopaths or sociopaths. Those people are, like,
those are straight up villains. Yeah. Nobody's going to fight you on those.
Yeah. Those people are just kind of like in a different category. I'm saying people who do bad deeds and are still kind of wired in a more positive direction. And for those people, you're only seeing a piece of that person, like, that deed they did, but you don't know who that person is like to their to their friends or family. Think about it. Maybe, for example, let's say there's a mafia who is completely villain-like to others, his victims, but very affectionate to their family. Or, they become a mafia just to protect their family. The people who, like I said, are the victims of that mafia will see that person as a villain. But what are they to their children? To them, Mafia could be a loving father, mother, just a guardian to them. There are so many different ways to see one person, and a villain can be a villain or not a villain depending on the situation or the perspective of one person or another. And so it's just like very complicated. And that's, I guess, like I said, like not sociopaths or psychopaths or people like that who just, are like crazy sometimes, but just other people who live, for example, like, people who steal. Sometimes they steal because they have to live. They have to eat. They have family. Maybe, they haven't been eating for 10 days. They might die, Survival is very strong motivation for many people. And then do we see those people as villains? Should we see them?
I think it comes down to how do you categorize people? Are they bad or are they just broken?
Yeah.
Are they villains or are they just messed up? Yeah. And lumping people into a category. But I think that you are also kind of getting into like ethics a little bit.
Yeah.
So I took an ethics class in college too.
Oh, okay.
And if you're seeing a pattern here, it's that I'm super into this stuff. That one I actually had to take. It was another one of those things like you have to take it, but I did enjoy it. And one of the things we talked about was like, there was a word for it, but basically like cultural sensitivity.
Okay,
and
yeah.
Considering, okay, so is something that is fully accepted by a certain culture, does that make it good? Like there are practices in other countries where people are harmed, mutilated, physically hurt, to an alarming degree.
Yes.
And it's considered a cultural practice.
Yes.
And so at what point are we allowed to say something about someone else's culture? And it's like, well, if many, many people are suffering from this thing, then yes, we should say something about it. But if it's something that we're like, I think that's wrong, but no one's really suffering from it, then that's another thing. But you were kind of getting into that, like, what do we consider bad? What do we consider evil? Because something that like a Westerner might consider evil, someone else might not. Or, someone in Korea might consider something done in the West evil, and then, vice versa.
Yes.
Like, it starts to blur into like what's culturally acceptable and what's not, too. Yeah. Plays into it.
And then there are like issues where, for example, like what you were saying with cultural like sensitivity, like there are like rules or like statements that state that maybe we should like you said, if a lot of people are suffering for this, maybe from this we should, say that's wrong or that should be changed. But most of the time, those statements and stuff are made by European or Caucasian people. And I know that sometimes a lot of other people also say, yes, that's possible. We think that's true. But how are you going to see this? Like, and this gets deeper, but like with history, in the recent ages, Caucasian people have had more power than Asian or, Middle Eastern people. And because of this power, there have been a lot of like institutions and groups that have been formed just from, with a lot of Caucasians in them. And if, I hate to say this, but for example, honor killing in the Middle Eastern places, some people will say that is a serious problem, while others will say that is culture, and some will say that is righteous. And was it the UN Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, they said this is not something that should be happening somewhere because it is killing, it is murdering. And from a Middle Eastern person's point of view, I think it would look like they were like the UN or Caucasian other countries, not native to that region. They were
overstepping.
Yes, forcing an opinion. And since I'm Korean and I'm just looking at this issue, I'm saying, and I'm also a woman, but that is painful. I mean, those people are dying just because of another person's decision, and mostly they're men. I don't think that's something that should just say, oh, that's culture, let's just leave it. But then I think, are we really, like you said, overstepping? Maybe we should think about this. And I guess this kind of comes in with culture. Oh, where are we going? So for example, some people in Korea, maybe many, at least some, have tasted dog meat in their life, and I haven't. But dog meat, that's not. It was not really. I guess not everyone thought it was fine, but some people thought it was fine, and they still do it now.
It was started in the famine times, right?
Yes.
It had to do with the famine, and then it was kind of it went on for so long that it just kind of became the norm, right?
Mm-hmm. And well, I won't say norm, because people in Korea will also say that, not just because other people say, oh, it's bad, but they'll just say, I don't want to eat a dog. But in that sense, it's what was I even going to say? I forgot. So honor killing and then, or murdering, and then with dog meat. And people will say, oh, that's bad. And others will say, I want to eat a dog. What's you're overstepping your boundaries. This is my right to eat a dog. It's fine. And so, and then if they start putting laws and measures in to say, no, you cannot eat a dog, that actually goes against human rights. And so it's complicated. Everyone has different ideas, and to actually go and say, no, you can't do that, that could bring more to it. It's people need to think and just talk with each other, but no, they rarely do that.
Yep. Loaded topic.
Mm-hmm.
But we went over
your
considerably. Mm-hmm. Sorry, David, teacher, and Heat Up. You're going to have some editing to do. Yeah. So I'll just go ahead and wrap it up. Basically, we kind of agreed this is a loaded question, right?
Oh, yes.
It's very loaded. Both.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be aware of villains and, truly horrible people,
yes,
in order to grow and develop and protect ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But also at the same time, these people contribute a lot of really terrible things into the world.
Yes. And just think of the harm they do, and not just on wealth or land. It's more psychologically, and people might start doing similar types of crimes,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big problem in America. But that's conversation for later. I could talk about this all day, but alas, I don't think anyone wants to listen to us all day. So we'll just wrap it up here. And it was good getting to talk to you, Nadine. Thank you for listening, everyone. I hope this helps you understand the topic a lot more, and form your own opinion on this. Mm-hmm. What do you think? Do you think we need villains, or do you think they cause too much harm? This has been Right Place, Right Time.
See you next time.
See you next time.